There is only one religion in the world that is fair game for our media to demonize and ostracize, and that is the Christian religion. And that brings me to the Deep End commentary.
When you don't know what to do, or what to believe, when you need commitment to truth, turn to the Deep End commentary.
All right, I want to talk to you about this. The media's never-ending quest to produce anti-Christian propaganda. And it's there. Ask yourself, when was the last time a Muslim was portrayed as the villain in the movies? When was the last time a Hindu was portrayed as the villain in the movies? It's always the biblical Christian, right? You know, just go to like Shawshank Redemption or Rock of Ages. These movies that always portray, those fundamentalist, bigoted Christians, those Bible-believing, Bible-thumping Christians. They're always the bad guy, right? So there's this never-ending quest to produce anti-Christian propaganda. I bring you to the Washington Post. Look at the headline. The Washington Post, in the middle of all this Ukraine war. The bond that explains why some on the Christian right support Putin's war. So here's what they want to do. They want to basically tie Christians to Putin. Why? Because Putin is now the bad guy. Putin is now the warden in Shawshank Redemption, and so let's lump all Christians in with him. Now, I will stipulate that in the article it says why some on the Christian right, not all. But nevertheless, the article is hilarious for many reasons we'll get to in a moment. But consider this other article from The Guardian. Vladimir Putin, a miracle defender of Christianity or the most evil man? It's like, okay, so he is a defender of Christianity and the most evil man. Like, they're so close, we can't distinguish which one he is. This is, again, the media's quest to create and propagate anti-Christian propaganda because the God of this world hates the gospel and those who believe it. And so the God of this world is in charge of the structures of this world in many respects, and he orchestrates and demonizes Christianity, orchestrates those organizations to demonize Christianity as often as he possibly can. But let's go back to this Washington Post article because it is hilarious. Here's one of the quotes from the article. It says, white evangelicals once saw Russia as an existential threat to traditional gender roles and sexual morality. So there they go, right to genitals again. And it's going to be all about genitals in this article. But over the past 3 decades, they have forged a partnership in global family values, in a global family values movement that not only embraces sexual and gender traditionalism, but sees these practices as a solution to demographic changes around the globe. Now, I've read the whole article so that you don't have to, and you don't want to, trust me. The writer just continues to run through this history of Russia and Christianity over the last 100 years. Basically forgetting that Russia for 79 years was the most anti-Christian country on the face of the earth. Obliterated religion, closed churches, enacted military forced conversion and propagation of atheism to its citizens. Interestingly enough, little tidbit about Russia, Soviet Russia, after 79 years of government-sanctioned atheism, the percentage of atheists went from 5% of the population to 6%. So it's an astounding 1% growth after almost 80 years of government propaganda to disbelieve in God. Actually only produced 1% higher of disbelief in God amongst its citizens. Why is that? Because you can't stop the gospel. The church went underground. The church continued to spread the gospel through, they used to share pieces of paper. Lots of great stories about Soviet Russia, the Christians who were underground during that time. Same thing is happening in China right now and other countries. You can't stop the gospel. The gospel will always go forward. Amen, amen, amen. But anyway, the writer runs through 100 years of Russian history to show how communism once embraced progressive sexual morals, which is actually not true. But they do reference abortion and divorce, which were permitted under communist Russia. But then that pesky fall of communism happened, the writer basically says, and the churches were reopened, people came to Christ, and mission organizations flooded the nation, bringing the gospel. Now, the result at the fall of communist rule was, again, that is true from the article, missionaries from this country and others went into Russia in full force and brought the gospel. And the result was mass conversions during the 1990s. And I remember I was in Bible college at the time, and we used to have missionaries visit us on a regular basis during missions week at college. And they would talk about that the iron, what was it called? The Iron Curtain? The Iron Curtain coming down has literally produced a revival in Russia, and there was just a hunger and thirst for people of Ukraine, people of Russia, longing for the gospel. It was finally available. And what a powerful testament to what happens when you let the gospel be preached freely. Anyway, the result of preaching the gospel in Russia during the 1990s and early 2000s was a stronger moral standard than the United States. So as Russia starts to increase its moral standards regarding sexuality and gender, the United States does the exact opposite and starts to plummet into what we are now in right now. Cultural confusion, sexual confusion, gender confusion, all this kind of nonsense. And the government, as we report in this show very many times, the government becoming a wedge between mom and dad, a wedge between parent and child, creating more and more divisions, not unity, divisions. And then she writes about how Boris Yeltsin and Putin found that the growing Russian Orthodox Church could be a tool to unite the nation around their values and create patriotic elements that will eventually be leveraged for their own political ambitions. And she's not wrong about that. But then she literally jumps from the growth of Christianity in post-communism Russia to, you're not going to believe this, January 6th. Again, don't read the article. I read it for you. It is just such a piece of propaganda. And I don't know how these people get away with it, but they do. Well, I do know. I've already explained it. The God of this world. The God of this world is in charge, and he puts these ideas into the minds of the ignorant and anti-Christian amongst us. So we have to expect this as Christians. The world will hate us. Matthew 24:9, Jesus said, "You will be hated by all nations for my sake." Don't forget that Jesus never promised us to be loved. He by the people. We're loved by God. And because we're loved by God, it's okay if we're hated by people. Amen? Right? That's really true. But I report on this because it really is, and I said this to my church a couple weeks ago, it is like I get to talk about the end times in real time. Because every nation is ramping up as anti-Christian sentiment. And in America and in the West, it's a soft bigotry, but it is growing. It is a subtle increasing bigotry through the educational system, through the growing federal government, through the media, Hollywood, and the entertainment industry. And mind you, by the way, these Washington Post types who write these kind of articles will be the same people who champion Muslims getting elected to Congress and consider that advancement, progress, diversity, equity, equality, whatever. But that's a religion, by the way, where they still execute gays. They throw them off buildings in some nations. It's where they treat wives as property of their husbands, while at the same time demonizing Christians, the Washington Post, for their evangelism that leads to social order and traditional family ethics. It's called hypocrisy. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to check out more content from the channel, you can click here or you can go here. Oh, and I also preach on the weekends, and if you'd like to watch some of that, it's right here. Thanks for being here.